All right, in section 1-5, which starts on page 101 in the textbook, we're starting to move up in the world and we're being paid by salary. We're not being paid by piecework or hourly or anything. We're getting paid by what job needs to be done. Now, this is for more professional type of people, and I hope that someday you'll work into a job that earns where you earn salary. This demands a lot of responsibility because your boss is just going to tell you that you need to get the job done, and he's not going to tell you necessarily how many hours that you're going to have to work. So let's take a look at it. The only thing that's going to be tricky with salary is the terminology. Salaries are typically quoted on annual basis. On an annual basis. So what you'll see is people will earn $30,000 a year annual salary, or else they'll earn $50,000 annual salary or $18,000 annual salary. Well, you don't work all year and then have the employer plop $18,000 in your lap. They usually dole it out either by the week, or else they'll pay you every other week, or else they'll pay you twice a month, which is different than every other week, as we're going to see. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get paid, and the terminology is really the only thing that could possibly trip you up, because we're going to figure out what your gross pay is per pay period, and the only thing you do is you take your annual salary and you divide it by the number of pay periods that you have per year. Okay, so let's take a look at this. In fact, here in your textbook, you want to make sure you understand this. This last sentence is the really important operant part of this whole unit, probably. For those of you who don't know, there are 52 weeks in a year. Okay, so if you get paid weekly and you have a salary, you divide by 52. If you can get paid every 2 weeks, bi-weekly, okay, you take 52 divided by 2, which is 26. So bi-weekly is 26. You're getting paid every other week, no matter what. Semi-monthly is a little bit different. Semi-monthly is you get paid twice a month. Okay, the first, maybe it's the second and fourth Friday of the month, or whatever it is. You get paid twice a month, no matter what. So there's 24 pay periods if you get paid semi-monthly, and probably fairly uncommon if you get paid once a month. You get paid, there's 12 months in a year, so you get paid 12 times in a year. So make sure you understand there's 52 weeks in a year. If you get paid bi-weekly, it's divided by 26. Semi-monthly, which means you get paid twice a month, is 24. Monthly is 12. Okay, so let's take a look at some of these. Just as simple as that. Here's an example 1. The book talks about find the salary per pay period, and that's pretty much what the whole unit is going to be about, finding the salary per pay period. It makes sense. You got a guy who earns $42,648 per year. It's a girl. They say they want to know what her monthly salary is, and then they say assume that she gets paid weekly. What's her weekly salary? So let's take a look at this. On a monthly basis, if she got paid monthly, you just take the $42,648, divide it by 12 months in a year, and she's going to get a check for $3,554 every month. So they've divided her annual salary divided by the number of pay periods. If she gets paid weekly, a little bit easier to budget that way, probably. We're just going to take her annual salary and divide it by how many weeks there are in a year. So the 42,000 some odd dollars divided by 52, and that's her weekly salary. Okay? Where you're going to get tripped up is the bi-weekly and semi-monthly. So sit and take a minute and ponder and prove to yourself that there is a difference between getting paid bi-weekly and semi-monthly. That's the part that trips students up. But when you get your calculator out and know there's 52 weeks in a year and get your mind wrapped around it, this math is very simple in this one. I want to drop down to one of the more interesting questions, I think, in this unit. That's question 12. and work through that with you. In question 12, they're asking us to do a little bit of a analysis job here. Make sure this is in here. They're saying assume that your present job pays you a monthly gross salary of $1,560, and you're offered a new position that pays $8.60 an hour with time and a half for all overtime over 40 hours a week. Think, well, maybe that's a good deal. I don't know. What they want you to know is they want to know how many hours of overtime per week, would you need to work to earn the same amount per week at your present job. Okay, so maybe your present job, you're getting a salary, but geez, you're working so darn many hours, you think, you know what, maybe this is a better deal. You're trying to analyze the two. So this isn't too tough at all. It might take a little bit of thought, so let's take a look at this. First off, let's figure out how much you're making per year right now. The book says that you're making $1,560 per month. So if I multiply that by 12, right now you're making $18,720 per year. And this is your annual pay. Now, the other job, let's figure out what your annual, I hope I get my hand out of the way here. Let's figure out your annual straight time pay on your other job. Well, they're offering you $8.60. Zoom out just a little bit here. An hour times 40 hours a week. That's going to tell you how much you make per week, and I'm going to also multiply that by 52 weeks in a year. Okay, so if I take $8.60 times 40 hours a week times 52 weeks in a year, you're going to be earning $17,888. Okay? Are you with me so far? So the new job on an annual straight time basis does earn less per week than your salary position. In fact, if we subtract the 18 minus the 17, $832 less per year. I've just taken the annual amount that you have made on a salary basis, subtracted from the annual straight time pay, and I got $832 difference. And the question asks, if you remember, how much weekly overtime hours will you need to do to make up the 832? Well, that's not hard. All I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what my overtime rate is on the job I'm thinking about. The overtime rate is going to equal $8.60 an hour times 1.5. We learned that right in section 2. So my overtime rate is $12.90. Now, it's just a simple matter of figuring out, well, how many hours do I have to work to make up the 832? Simple enough. I'm just going to take the $832, which is my difference between the two jobs, divide that by $12.90, which is my overtime rate, and that's going to equal $64.56 hours a year. So I have to work 64.56 hours per year at $12.90 to make up the $832 in difference. Are you following me on this? You might have to watch this a couple times. The question, though, didn't ask how much per year. It said how much per week. Well, we know there's 52 weeks in a year. So I'm just going to find the answer, take my 64.56 hours, and I'm going to divide that by 52 weeks of the year, and that's going to equal 1.24 hours per week. Okay, that seems like a lot of math, and there's other ways to get to the same answer, but you know what? This one makes sense for me. And if you want to, you can now test it by just saying, you can go backwards. You can take $8.60 an hour times 40 times 52 plus $12.90 times 1.24 and work backwards to prove it to yourself. So anyway, that's your salary. Just make sure you know your annual pay, straight time pay, and you should be good.